Hello students, you are welcome to our next class. This class is taking us to the second step in our tuple knowledge, and this one will take us to the manipulation of tuples and the extraction of tuple, the accessing tuple data. So we'll be looking at tuple of tuples and the accessing of tuple data. So what is a tuple of tuples and how do we access the data inside tuples? Accessing tuple data. So we'll look at the tuple of tuples and accessing tuple data. Those are the two things we are going to be looking at in this class. All right? Okay, so I want you to take your time with me because this topic might get a little bit tense. So take your time, open your ears and your mind and learn accordingly. First of all, let us start with tuple of tuples. What is a tuple of tuples? Tuple of tuples. A tuple of tuples is a tuple that has tuples inside it. That's quite funny, right? It's a tuple that has other tuples inside it. One of the simplest ways to create a tuple of tuple is to first create the tuples you want to put inside, then create your tuple of tuples by making the elements of your tuple of tuples your created tuples. I know everything I just said now sounds like gibberish, but I'm going to do it now so that you will all see it together. It will not be magic and we will all understand. Are we with me? Let's go. So I want to create a tuple of tuples that contains 3 tuples. Okay, let's write down the process of creating it, okay? So that we don't rush. Process of creating tuple of tuples. Okay? All right, good. We're all on the same page. Step 1. Create the tuples that, or let me say, create the baby tuples. I think that's the best way to say it. Create the child tuples. Yeah. In coding generally, child and parents is used for things that are nested. Nested, like a nest where you have the eggs inside the nest. But in this case, in coding, we kind of look at the mother as the nest. And then the eggs are the children and they are inside the mother. So our tuple of tuples will be like a nest. What is nested inside are the child tuples. So to create a mother tuple, which is the tuple of tuples, we will first create the child tuples. Okay? That is step 1. So let's create 3 child tuples. So I'll call the first one tuple A. Let's use capital A so it looks distinct. Tuple A, and tuple A will be equals to 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'll create tuple B. Tuple B will be equal to 4, 5, 6, 7. And then tuple C will then be equal to 8, 9, 10, 11. Interesting, isn't it? All right. So we have our 3 tuples. Now, we will now go to step 2, which is create the parent tuple. Create the parent tuple. Now, the parent tuple will now contain all the child tuples. So the parent tuple, we'll call it tuple P, right? And then inside tuple P, we'll create a tuple. What will now be the elements of that tuple? The same way 1, 2, 3, 4 are elements of tuple A, as you can see. 4, 5, 6, 7 are elements of tuple B. 8, 9, 10, 11 are elements of tuple C. We will now use tuple A, tuple B, tuple C as elements of tuple P. So tuple A, tuple B, and tuple C are elements of tuple P. Is that clear? All right, very good. So tuple A, tuple B, and tuple C are all elements of tuple P. Quite interesting and quite formalized, isn't it? Okay, so we are now going to go and take this into our code and take it to our editor and see how it runs. We are going to print tuple P. But before we go, we know that the editor does not take unnecessary talk. So you put your commenter, which is hash. Anything that is not a code, we put hash in front of it because we have to comment it out. Okay, we have to comment it out. Okay, so this is the code we are looking at. Control A, Control C. Let's go to our editor. All right, and voila. So now we run the code. Oh, can you see? So can you see to C? Can you see there are covering brackets inside? This is the first tuple, which is tuple A. It's inside its own bracket. Outside that bracket, there's a comma. Can you see that? Now we have tuple B. Inside its own bracket, having its own comma, yet outside that bracket, there's another comma. Before we now have tuple C, which inside its own bracket, it has its own comma, but there's no more comma outside the bracket because tuple C is the last one. Do we now understand what a tuple of tuples is? So this is like a tuple containing tuples. A tuple whose elements are also tuples. Is that clear? Is that clear? All right. So sometimes we might be looking at something I would like to call a manifold tuple. I know it sounds crazy. It's something I borrowed from the world of advanced mathematics. You forgive me for using it. Most of you may not know what manifold is in mathematics, but you can go and check it. Maybe you understand, maybe you won't, but that's where I'm borrowing this idea from. A manifold tuple, for me, I'm just calling it that, is a tuple that contains other tuples and still contains single elements. For example, if I do this, if I create a tuple P2, okay, let's call that tuple P2, right? Okay, or let me just call it tuple D. Tuple D. Okay, so tuple D will now be equals to tuple P plus, let's add any of the single elements to it, like tuple A. This is going to add single elements to a tuple that has tuples. This is what I call a manifold tuple. To me, I'm not saying you should call it that name perfectly, but me, I call it a manifold tuple. A manifold tuple, okay? All right. So let's print tuple D. We'll print tuple D, and then we see the outcome. So Control A, Control C, and then let's come here, and this is what we have. Yes, so let's run the code. Oh, can we see now? You can see the first element is a bracket containing elements that have their own comma outside the brackets. Another bracket containing elements inside the bracket with their own comma. Another comma outside the bracket. Now we have the third element, which is also still a tuple. And then now we have single elements. So it's not just tuples. This tuple, which is tuple D, contains both single elements and tuple elements. So you can have that. And you can see how I created that. I borrowed our addition from our first class. Is that clear? We learned in the first class that you can add two tuples together to create a like tuple that contains all their elements. Is that clear? All right. Okay. So that is a beautiful one. Okay. So now that we have seen this, how to create tuple of tuples, we'll be moving to the second part of this class, which is how do you access the data inside the tuple? Okay? Accessing the data inside the tuple. So I'm going to be moving this here because we are done with this, and we will create a new text box where we are going to be talking about that. Accessing the data inside the tuple. So what does that mean at all? You're wondering to yourself, what do you mean by accessing the data inside the tuple? You will see now. Let's say I have a tuple. I'm going to borrow a tuple from here. Tuple A. Let's borrow tuple A. And then we come and use it here. Okay. Tuple A. Tuple A contains 1, 2, 3, 4. But let's say I want to add 4 and 3 together. That means I want to add the last element, which is 4, and the second to the last element, which is 3, together. Sometimes I may not even know their value. I just want to add the last element and the second to the last element. Now, this is the most important thing when it comes to coding. I can easily write 3 plus 4 because I can see them with my eyes. But when a computer is running, you have to assume. Coding, that is why sometimes we look at coding as blind logic. You have to always assume that the only thing that can see your code is the compiler, the thing that is going to run it for people to use. So if I'm writing 3 plus 4, what if somebody now put another tuple and then the tuple is 9876? Will 3 plus 4 be the answer to 7 plus 6? No. So you have to write your code as if you don't know, as if somebody cannot see the content of your tuple, as if it's a blind person that is trying to work with your code. So in this case, we are going to be using variable method to hold the 3 and the 4. So in case we change what they are, we can then see other answers, which we are going to practice in our compiler. But the first thing we are going to do is first, let us extract the values. How do we get the 3 out? How do we get the 4 out of this tuple? Not just by writing it down. That you haven't gotten it out too. You have to get it out of tuple A. The 3 in tuple A is not ordinary 3. The 4 in tuple A is not ordinary 4. So we need to get the one from tuple A. I know some of you will be like, just write it down. You have gotten it out. Since you can see it. But what if you can't see it? And if the compiler is running and you are not there? That is what we call runtime problems. So you don't want runtime problems. So always write your code as if there are no human eyes that are going to see it when it wants to run. Now, I believe we have encountered indexing in the previous class, but if we have not, I'm going to introduce what we call indexing today. Indexing, following what we call Python counting, is how we extract the data, the values of arrays. We use index to extract the values of arrays. Let's write that down. We use indexes to extract the values of arrays. And the simplest array that we have is a tuple. Array means something that contains more than one element. Array means something that contains more than one element. Do you understand? So that's an array. Okay. So we've seen arrays and we've seen what these ones are. Okay, no problem. So now, how do we use indexing in code? We've seen the definition of array, and we use indexing to extract values. First thing we must remember when we are doing indexing is, we must remember our Python counting method. What do we call it? Python counting method. So what is the Python count? Python count goes like this. 0 is first, 1 is second, 2 is third, 3 is fourth, 4 is fifth, 5 is sixth. Meaning that, and 6 is seventh. Meaning that your Python count is -1 of your normal count. So if I want to count in Python, and somebody tells me this is number 1 mouse, let's say this mouse I'm using to work, this is number 1 mouse, I'll say 1 minus 1, 0. So in Python, this is number 0 mouse. Now there's a phone on my desk here, even though you can't see it, but let's just take it on faith. Now, if somebody takes this phone and said, this is the second object on the desk, a phone. a second phone. What I would do is I would look at it as, okay, second, that's 2. In Python, I'll say 2 minus 1, 1. So this is my 1 phone. So the second is 1 in Python. The first is 0. The third is 2. So like that, we keep subtracting 1. So it means that if I want to get this 1 here, let me show this. This one is the first element in tuple A. If I want to get it, I must use 0 to get it. But how will I use that 0 to get it? That's where the technicality comes in. To get it, I will simply say, let me say first element, let's call it that. First element of tuple A, but let's not write that up too long. First element will be equals to the name of the tuple A, square brackets, open and close square brackets, and take the number that you want to use to extract it, 0. Can you see? So this will give me first element. Now I can get the last element by taking the same method, tuple A, and if you look at it, you will see that this is element number 4. But remember, this is Python. So what position is it? It's going to be position 3. Number 4, element 4 is position 3. Is that clear? So it means that in our square bracket, we are going to write 3 to get the last element. Is that clear? Okay. Because in normal mathematics, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is the first, 2 is the second, 3 is the third, 4 is the fourth. But in Python, 1 is the 0th, 2 is the first, 3 is the second, 4 is the third. Is that clear? So that's why we are using 3 to get element 4. So the last thing we are going to do is we have sum of elements. I'm using, over verbal variable names so that we'll be able to be clear on what we are doing. So sum of elements now be first element plus last element. First element plus last element. So we now print sum of elements. Sum of elements. Is that clear? All right. Let's run this in our code editor. Okay. All right. Here we go. Control A, Control V, and then run. Okay. We have a little error there. All right. Can you see now? We did not do something before moving. Remember, we did it in last class. Everything that is not a code, we must comment it out. You can see when we took it there without commenting it out, it gave us an error. Every line that does not contain a code must be commented out. Okay, I think that is all. From now on, we have code. All right, let's go on. So we copy it again, and then we paste in our editor. And now we shouldn't have any errors. Let's see. We've commented this out. Sum of elements. Okay, can you see here now? If you look at this place, I wrote sum of elements. I now wrote sum of elements. Most of you make this mistake a lot like I've made now, and you complain that your code is not running. But you must make sure that this and this must be the same. So we are going to make this sum of elements, okay? Sum of elements. Let's copy that again and paste it here finally. And then we should see our code run. Okay, very good. It gave us 5. Ah, nice. So 5, that means tuple A, the first element, which is tuple A0 is 1. Tuple A3 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. Can you see our 5 here? Can you see? We have 5. That tells you that you don't need to know what tuple A0 is. We know it's the first element. We don't need to know what tuple A3 is. We know it's the fourth element. So the first element plus the fourth element together, and then they will give us 5. 1 plus 4 is 5. And in this Python, it will be the 0th element plus the 3rd element, and that is 5. Is that clear? All right, good. Okay, so let's go back to our board. So that is how we extract values from a tuple. So you can see what we have done. We extracted 3, we extracted 4, we extracted 1 and 4 rather from the same tuple, and we worked with it, and we see how it goes. All right, okay. So I'll be giving you a classwork here. In this classwork, what you'll be doing for me is you are going to create a tuple and add the first element to the last, the second element to the second to the last, and so on. Now, your tuple must contain 12 elements. 12, or let's make it odd so that we have a kind of 11 elements. Your tuple must contain 11 elements. Is that clear? 11 elements. Or let's make it more crazy, 13 elements. A lot of people are scared of it about 13, but let's use 13. So your tuple must contain 13 elements, and you have the first, you extract it the way I've extracted the first and the fourth in this place using the Python indexing method. Extract the first and the last, add them together, extract the second, second to the last, add them together, extract the third, third to the last, add them together until you get to the center. Is that clear? All right. Thank you very much. My name is Ayok Badebo, and this has been our Python class on tuple of tuples and accessing the data inside tuple. Thank you very much. For those who want to reach us, our number remains 081 3662 8035. You can call on us for clearer and more fantastic Python classes. Thank you.